thanks so much for staying for the Q&A. You've got a new face now, so give me 1 sec, just sit down. My name is Tristan Anderson, and I am going to be hosting the Q&A, as well as being a documentary filmmaker myself. I also run something called Docheads, which is a documentary screening, networking and membership organisation. And the reason I mention that is because that's where I met the director of this film. This is a Q&A session, so there'll be a roving mic around. When I'm asking my initial questions, please do think of some questions yourself. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So please give a round of applause to Charlie Targett-Adams, the director of the film.
Hello. Thank you very much for staying and coming as well. That's great.
Nobody left.
Yeah.
That's always a good start. Nobody left during the whole film. Nobody left the Q&A. So, as I say, I'm going to start with just a few simple questions. So please do think of some, and then we'll make it like a nice you and us and everybody together. So you've been working with the band since about 2008, and this is your second feature doc, and your first feature doc played at Sundance with them. Which is a very exclusive and important film festival, so well done for that. And so then the question is, it's quite rare that directors go back and make a second feature doc with somebody, so really simply, why do a second film with the guys?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, I kind of like worked up with them. I kind of started my career kind of just doing little bits for them whenever I could, and then they kind of gave me a bit more opportunity, and I thought I could tell a bit more of a story and more things could happen. And so the first doco we did was more like the classic kind of raison d'etre, what the band's all about, you know, global touring, where they are at this stage in their career and everything like that. So that kind of was filmed over the period between 2009 and 2012. And when we kind of finished all that and, you know, did all the festivals and had a great run, and back in those days had the DVDs and it came out and stuff, they had this amazing opportunity to go on this tour. And they've never been to 8 cities in Russia before. They've only been to Moscow and St. Petersburg. So the thoughts were, hey, we should do something else. We should go and film something about this, but let's not do it about us. Let's kind of reach out to the people. And as you said, at the time, it was when, you know, we had the kind of Ukraine kind of conflict all going on. Russia was on the forefront of the news. And a lot of people were saying Placebo shouldn't go. They're saying you should like boycott this. You know, why is a band like you kind of like preaching tolerance and, you know, kind of having a liberal view going to a kind of really repressive country like this? And they're like, well, that's the whole point. As kind of Brian and Steph mentioned, it's like they don't believe in kind of artistic boycotts. It's, you know, the people who suffer are the music fans. So they were like, we want to go out there and we want to go and reach out to the people, and, you know, film is a big medium now. It's, you know, great, you know, you kind of show it all over the world, the internet, all that access. Let's make something of it. So yeah, we kind of did that.
One thing that I noticed during the film is that, you can stop me if you're wrong, but the audience seems to be much younger than one would expect for a band who've been around on their 7th album. So what did you find there? Because if they're going to places where they don't normally get bands, but interestingly, it's the younger generation who was you know, engaged with them and were really excited to see them. So what was that experience like for you? Yeah,
I mean, what I always see, because I work with a kind of lot of other bands, I kind of do things like going on tour, and you realise I'm from London, I grew up in London, and then suddenly you go out of London and you realise there's a whole other world out there. And, you know, we think that like, oh, everything's so important, and music is so important in London. And we always want the new, the kind of the best in this. But actually, you go to South America, you go to Russia, you know, you go to Asia, and, you know, there's loads of fans out there, and bands just literally can't do it all. So, you know, you may be kind of, you know, your career may have kind of gone, you know, through the whole ranks of the kind of in the UK, and then suddenly you go to Russia, and then these, I can't describe more than like teeny boppers.
Yeah,
all down the front, going mental, and for them, that's their band. You know, they found them at that point, and I think a band like Placebo is, they create an amazing kind of safe space. It's kind of like the cinema. You know, you can come into the cinema, it's all dark, it's all nice, it's cozy, you can sit down and you can kind of like tackle big issues or different things, where if you went and kind of said that to your mates out in the streets, you know, you can't do that. So a band like Placebo kind of provides that atmosphere for countries which aren't so kind of, you know, open to like different ideas, such as what we live in the UK. So it's great to go and see, you know, fans like that just absolutely giving it all, you know, absolutely emotionally going. They don't care if, you know, if their mates think they're not cool or what this, that, the other. They're just gonna let it all out. And one of the best bits in the doco I really love is there's a little moment where I kind of film the crowds at the end, where there's these people just kind of completely shell-shocked, and they kind of just like staring into space. And you can think like, you know, they can have a million and one stories going through your head, thinking, like, what are they thinking about now? You know, are they all overwhelmed by what just happened? Or is it that now that like that's kind of, you know, that beautiful space is now finished and they've got to go back to their reality or anything like that? And so, you know, things like, and that's why Brian says, you know, it's great for kind of, you know, more, you know, liberal bands like Placebo to go out to a place like that and play for the people and kind of, you know, give them that kind of opportunity to kind of just let go and be free.
And I guess by being in that space, because there's limited alternative Russian culture, they're all collectively together. So as it says in the film, like they have little flash mob moments, and so they feel much more like connected with their being sort of the alternative, when maybe that's not the mainstream.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's kind of an internet phenomenon as well. You know, I think that's, you know, as you know, you can do a couple of tweets and on you know, Tahrir Square suddenly get a whole kind of mass movement going. This is a kind of small version. These guys are just kind of saying, hey, we should all turn up, and if this constantly do this, and it becomes like interactive as well. You know, you're not just being there just kind of taking in something, you're kind of trying to be more of a part of it and everything like that. But I think, you know, even though I mean, Russia's such a massive country, you know, so they were filling like, you know, 15,000 arenas in 10 cities. You know, you can just go where, you know, in the UK to do that, it's, you know, it's kind of pretty tough to do that. But a band like Placebo could just go there and do that there, or in South America and things like that. So.
Well, you can tell the fans really appreciate it.
Mm.
So slightly onto sort of a more kind of production question. So I read in an interview you did about this film that before you went out to film, you only had maybe a couple of subjects, as in like let's call them the alternative heads. You only had a couple of them going out. Now in the filmmaking world, where there's money and time and resources, like that's either extremely bold or a little bit silly.
Yeah.
Because you've got all this kind of energy and time, and you know normally everything's strategically planned and militant. But you know what did you think was going to happen if you only had like two people before you went?
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's the rock and roll world. You know, like, they still work like that. You know, it's just like, let's do something now and make it happen now. There's no planning. It's just like whatever happens. And yeah, it was like I kind of got an email a couple of months before they went on tour to come and have a chat about it. So I kind of went in and talked to the management and thought, here's some ideas. Went away, did a treatment, and they were like, okay, yeah, we'll think about it. We'll show the band all this. And then like the week before, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And they're like, right, so do you know who we're going to talk to? No, I don't. So then, you know, then you turn into like production mode, and then you get, you know, people who are great at like reaching out. And there's an amazing producer called Stephanie Fife, and she just kind of worked 24/7 before we went and managed to secure 3 people. And so really it was a whole kind of discovery as we go. But I kind of like that in documentary filmmaking anyway. You know, like you know, if you're being too prescribed, you might miss some of the, you know, the magic moments or things like that. You know, and even though Steph was very interested with the final artist, obviously Petr Pavlensky, but we just didn't have a clue how we would ever get in contact with, how would it happen. And we were trying every angle the whole way through it, and it was literally the last time before that, it was, I think, a contact from the local producer in St. Petersburg knew someone who blah blah blah, who said, oh, there's this bookshop, and we thought he wouldn't even turn up, and then he was there. Because there was a lot of contributors that we did get in touch with, and we would turn up, and they wouldn't turn up, and then we were like, why wouldn't they turn up? And they would be really, eager to come and meet us and talk about their things and stuff, and then when we'd be there, we'd just never turn up. So we never knew if someone kind of snitched them away, or if they kind of realised actually who Placebo were, and they were like, oh, forget it. And actually we had a fun one where we went to go and supposedly speak about Dostoevsky, and kind of we turned up, and it was this kind of 14-year-old young girl who was supposedly this kind of professor expert, and we were like, I don't think, and she did know a lot about it, but it didn't end up in the film.
Maybe that's a side film. This was like the extras. I'm just going to ask one more and then open it up to the crowd. So, this is like watching it in a cinema in London without the kind of general wide shots of the visual representation of the country. Like most of those places that you go to, you could be in any kind of city. Does that make sense? Like you didn't necessarily get a sense of the Secret Service and the political situation. Was that like a conscious move on your part to kind of stay away from any kind of not danger, but that kind of suspicion that we get as the media representation of Russia?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard because we're going around in this bubble of a kind of travelling circus, international rock band. So it's not really like we're kind of in there for 6 months or working out what's really going on and stuff, And a lot of things kind of just let happen and go through and stuff. But we really didn't. We really thought we would get there, and there would be more of a kind of presence, or people be checking us. They love uniform in Russia. I don't know why, they love wearing uniform. So even if you're just the kind of local, bouncer at a club, you're wearing full military outfits, and we were like, who is it? Who is this? And they're just like, oh, they like wearing that or something. So yeah, I mean, we're not sure on that stuff, but. Also, as we said, the further away from Moscow and St. Petersburg you were, the less kind of politicized people were. The people were just doing their own thing, and we were kind of trying to see are there kind of political activists here or anything like that? And it just seems they kind of just got left to kind of do their own thing. It's very kind of maybe centralized, kind of like the UK, kind of country where it's all about these one major city and then St. Petersburg. But people are kind of left to do their own devices, doing their own things, and they don't really kind of the people we were meeting weren't really talking about politics out there and stuff. But it was amazing to go and see that. The furthest place we went to basically, and we went to see that architect, and you go into that kind of hipster kind of pizza place, and you think that would never exist in the middle of Siberia, and obviously it does. So that's obviously how the world kind of works.
Do you think? Like a lot of alternative cultures that start sort of slowly creep into the mainstream and become dominant, do you think there'd be a time in X amount of years, or do you think that alternative culture is always going to stay quite small and on the sidelines? Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, well, in Russia, I wouldn't think so. I don't know. I wouldn't know too much about that really, apart from the experience I had there. But I think now, the more when we went and saw Russia, and if I travel with other bands and things like that everyone has more of a kind of little niche now, isn't it? People talk about it as your DIY life or something. I don't know. Where you kind of everyone can do their own little thing. Kind of for me, it reminds me of I imagine being in a kind of American high school in a kind of high school movie in the 90s. Everyone has their own little cliques, and they all kind of stick to their own thing and do their own thing. And maybe you get these huge artists like Adele or something, doing a thing, but people can get by doing their own stuff. One
of the interesting moments was when the TV station had their little clique. They realised that actually they can survive if they get crowdfunding, and that's a kind of uprising.
And amazing to see that's happening in places like Russia and things, where that's the problem, isn't it? Where in London, today I clicked on the BBC and typed in BBC Russia, and they have a whole feed on everything. And you are just getting all the stuff which is all the kind of real politicised Putin this bad that, and probably there are terrible things happening, but no one. That's why the Calvert Journal was amazing, because they're actually championing what people are doing, what artists are doing, what creatives are doing, and showing those different things and bringing them to everyone around the whole world via the internet, which is great.
Well, that's one of the reasons I love docs, and that you get to see a window on the world that you wouldn't normally get to experience. But what I'd really like to do is opening up to the audience. Apologies, these lights are very strong, it's like being on stage. I think there's a roving mic there, is there one there? Just a couple of households with the mics. Please wait till the mic comes to you so everybody can hear, and then when you've said your question, can you pass it back so then we can have as many as possible. And if we're British and awkward and nobody does the first one, don't worry, I've got a few more questions. But if you do have a question, please do shoot your hand up. And I know it's like, there's brilliant, there's one right in the middle there. Do you want to get the mics then? There you go.
I know you said you were on a bubble experience there, but did you feel, given the last few years there's been a lot of homophobic abuse in Russia, that the band received that? Did you experience that at all yourself?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, Steph obviously did a very brave thing by painting his Gibson Thunderbird, the huge bass, in the rainbow flag. And obviously before we went, there are laws in Russia where you can't promote homosexuality to minors, and the whole crowd's full of minors. and he's obviously got the bass. But we thought as soon as he did it, it'll have like some hoo-ha, the press would happen, anything like that. Zero, nothing. No one ever mentioned anything. And even, you don't know how much people understand that is a kind of statement with the kind of rainbow flag, but we didn't see anything. There was a couple of comments in the papers just mentioning it, but no one ever said it. But maybe also that was because the media couldn't say it, or something like that and everything. But that's why also Steph, we really wanted to do that final shot on Red Square, where that was Steph's own kind of act of defiance, kind of to walk on Red Square with the rainbow bass and kind of have a kind of bit of an iconic image to hopefully be the thing to say that that's him, that's Steph's kind of like response to it all.
I guess you never know until you try these things. And also again, it might be the way that we perceive how kind of dominant the police are.
Yeah, I mean, I've always got a terrible memory, but there's a documentary I did just recently watch on the BBC. What's it? Hypernormalization.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's seen that out there, but if they haven't, they definitely should. It's amazing.
It will mess with your head quite a lot.
Yeah, but in there they do talk about Russia at this time, and they talk about a right-hand man of Putin, which again, I'm a terrible memory, I can't know his name, but he seems to have this policy where they fund a lot of the very liberal arts, and they fund a lot of the kind of extremist, kind of more fascist arts, and they fund both of them. And everyone's like, oh my God, why are you doing that? And then they announce that they are also, that's what they're doing. And they let everyone know this. And that's supposedly one of the kind of, in the documentary, sort of saying the kind of process that they're doing in Russia to kind of make everything a bit of a madhouse.
Yeah, confusing stuff.
Confusing and chaos and all things like that. So, obviously, like I said, being in our bubble, we didn't get any problems with, being a band like that promoting, well, they weren't promoting, but kind of showing, homosexuality or anything like that.
Another question, please. There's one, again, right in the middle. There's the mic coming. There you go.
Hi. I was just wondering, since it kind of took a turn in the middle where there was almost this disappointment of it not being as political as you thought, what were your thoughts as a filmmaker, how to kind of take that onwards? Did it change your idea at all of what the outcome was going to be? And also, since it seemed like that was kind of the thesis, that it was going to be very, very political, what do you take away from it now, since that wasn't really the thing? What for you became the core of the film then?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, the process I always go through as a filmmaker is a discovery myself. And, I don't really want to come in a documentary with too many preconceived ideas, and you want to kind of take it, and documentaries like this, especially band documentaries, what I kind of love about them is that they become like historical documents, that in like 10 years, 20 years, if it ever survives 50 years time, you look back and you just see even what, the haircuts that people have, or the clothes they wear, or how they speak, or things like that. Like I remember watching I kind of got into it when I watched the Penham-Backer Bob Dylan documentary when they did a tour in the '60s. And when you watch that now, you're like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like I can't believe like the country was like that. So I kind of like these rock documentaries to show what kind of culture is like at the time, youth culture, music culture, everything like that. So that's how we kind of approached it. And obviously we want to have a kind of interesting story, we want a bit of drama, we want to have something to happen as we go. But because we're kind of making it up as we go and trying to work out who's going to be there and stuff like that, we want to try and find a hook and find anything. And I feel that in the end, how the film turned out to be was a bit of a crescendo. Kind of like starts off small and not political at all, and us just discovering things. And then by the end, we do kind of dip our toe into more of that world, and we kind of have a bit of a statement. But I mean, you can never be purely partisan and just be say nothing. Not have a side. There's obviously, we kind of take a side at the end. But it's not really something that we're really wanting to kind of push a message or anything like that for it.
Nice. And I would add that in the documentation of that time, people will then realise that drummers never wear tops.
Yeah, there we go. Steve.
Drummers never wear tops.
Yeah.
Another question, please. One right at the front there. Thank you so much.
Hi. I did quite like Muddlehood. I quite like their sort of angle. I couldn't quite work out the graffiti. The guy with the it looked like they created. He was in bars. Really huge piece. Was that anything to do with them?
Did everybody get that question?
Sorry, I pulled it away. The huge piece of graffiti.
The mural at the end on the picture.
Was that to do with them, or was that just this?
So that was part Nizhny Novgorod place. It's like a kind of, it's like maybe the equivalent of our like Oxford or Cambridge. It's a really old city that has this amazing old city centre, and those the wooden buildings, like the traditional buildings. And obviously in every city, like the developers are now coming, just smashing them all down, getting rid of them. So those guys were incredibly interesting, and I think we might have, a Placebo fan might have like recommended them or something. So you've got to check these guys out. They're completely doing their own thing, and they were such a kind of little double act, like amazing characters. And it was kind of like they had the one guy, I think it was called Andre, who did all the artwork, who painted it all. He had the skills, and then you had the thinker, who was like Fedor, who is the guy who just had, would go away, have a coffee, have a think, come back, put it up, and had amazing grasp of English as well. It was just like unbelievable what he was saying. And that's their idea, is that trying to kind of make something of these buildings, so then people look at them in a different light. And that specific one of the bars, that wasn't theirs, but it was part of the kind of like more general artistic kind of collective that was happening there. We went into one of their coffee shops that they kind of all went to, and like a lot more people were there kind of chatting and stuff. I mean, obviously that's another thing, saying living in somewhere like London, being an artist like that, I mean, how can you go and have a coffee and just stick up some art and do this and stuff like that? You'll be like grafting, trying to make some kind of like dodgy commercial or something, to kind of say. So, that's it. Out in a place like that, there seems to be more of means to be able to kind of have those those kind of artistic pursuits and things. But I know I just love those guys as kind of characters, and like their story and how kind of easy they kind of did things, and the really interesting thing how he said that he was collecting data as well. So they were putting up these things, and then so there were so many levels to what they were doing. It wasn't just like let's paint a picture and stick it up. That they kind of I wonder what they're going to do with this data, or like they would then turn it into another digital art or something. Who knows? I don't know. But they were great.
Lovely. Any more? There's got to be one more. I reckon there's one more. Okay. Well, have a little think. I'll ask him. Just so I have a filmmaker's perspective. What was like the choice of having like quite a singular person, voiceover led, kind of throughout the film? Like, was there a decision in that, like, to tell the story? It was just the way it worked, because you were sort of doing it on the huff.
Yeah, I mean, it was many things. Say, the original documentary we did, Coming Up for Air, Brian, the lead singer, he VO'd the whole of that. So we were kind of saying like, right, that was kind of Brian's internal monologue. So this is going to be Steph's one. So let's see, because also, I mean, Steph comes across amazing in that film, really confident and stuff. But I only knew them since 2008. But Steph's always kind of taken a bit more of a back seat on everything. He's very musical. He's an incredibly talented musician. And it was always Brian who was kind of the front of the interviews. And whenever I see them doing press interviews, Brian kind of takes the control. So I thought it was a great opportunity to then kind of have Steph's side of it all. But also there's someone obviously that I should have mentioned ages ago, which was the amazing editor we had on this, Jerry, because he was such a huge influence on the whole of the way the film kind of got set out as well. Because, like you said, because I've already done a whole kind of doco of it, when I came into this one, I was like, I just don't want to do all those same ideas again. And the first doco I did was a real one-man band. Back in the day, you kind of just, you did everything. So, you film, you write the treatment, you film it, you edit it, you do everything. Where this one, I knew, if I just did that again, it'd be the same film. So luckily, Jerry, who said yes, that he would come and help edit this one. And, he really kind of, got out all the kind of great stuff that I don't think I would have seen, and then brought so much of him, his own kind of style and personality to it. So I really think in documentary, more than anything, editor kind of becomes like the second director.
Yeah, people don't realise that.
Yeah.
Like, you put the editor is your secret weapon.
Yeah.
If you can find a great one, then the director can just like stay back and let them do the magic.
Yeah, filmmaking is such a collaborative process, and everything like that. There's so many, and it's such an evolution. So many things happen and change and different, and especially like a documentary where you can't write a script and do a storyboard and have a set and this is what's happening. And so, everyone kind of comes in and adds their own to it. But an editor in a documentary is so vital, because you're giving them hours and hours of rushes. And then, I don't want to kind of get too carried away with some stupid thing that I love because that shot's amazing or this, that, the other. And they can kind of see the wood from the trees and then kind of really delve into it and get out all the stuff. So, yeah, it was, really kind of, owe a lot to Jerry.
Yeah, there's a kind of phrasing in filmmaking that if you've gone up a mountain, trekked up a mountain, like had to sleep, go up the mountain, get this beautiful shot, and it's taking like 2 days, and you have this emotional attachment to it. And then when you go back to the edit, you're like, we have to put the mountain shot.
Yeah.
And the editor just goes, it's not relevant, but you're like, we have to put the mountain shot because you have an emotional attachment. So you might have experienced some of that, like, because all the train journeys and the touring, you're like, wow, this took us so long to get there, it must go in, and then the editor can be like, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need that a lot of the time with a second voice in an edit room.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, I kind of approach bands like, I take kind of David Attenborough's advice. You don't interfere with nature. You let the whole thing play out in front of you, but you don't go in and kind of get too friendly or kind of this, that, the other. You always got to kind of keep a bit of distance, because otherwise then it literally turns into a complete sycophantic film about like, this is a great band, look what we do, and obviously the other forces, labels, management are kind of going, yeah, put this in, make them look good, make them do that and stuff like that, and you're like, why have you got that person in there and stuff like that, and so you're trying to kind of hold on, making it a good film, doing all the kind of filmmaking stuff, but then having a bit of distance from the full kind of little storms in the teacups and things that happen and stuff like that. So.
Well, hopefully you can make it a trilogy. Third one.
It's a challenge.
This time next year. Unless there's any more questions, I can wrap it up. We'll be around in the bar downstairs, so you can come and have a chat with us, and also know the editors here. So if anyone wants to stay and chat, filmmakers, they have egos, so they like to be picked up. So please do come and, not saying you've got an ego, like generally, maybe I have. Thank you ever so much for staying. Hope you enjoyed the Q&A. Please do tweet and let everybody know about the festival and have a look at the programme. I'm actually putting on a night of short documentaries that are focused on music and bands on Wednesday. So if you're interested, you can check out those links. Thank you for supporting a film festival like this. It's really important. Wouldn't have without you guys. And thanks again to the director. Charlie. Dramatic pause there. And have a lovely evening. Cheers, guys. See you next time.
Thank you very much, Thanks.